Okay, I'm going to go through some of the parts that you would use to replace on the 2-inch Armor Spray Extreme Duty pump. When you're using these things, the first thing that you're going to find is that the balls and seats are the first things that will wear out on a pump. And I've got a few examples of various seats. This right here is a new seat. As you can see, there's a thickness to it, there's a bulk, and what happens is as the pump cycles, it goes up and down and seats in the seat as the material runs through the pump. When the pump cycles, the ball then slams down into the seat, and you end up with eventually wear on both the ball and the actual seat. This is a seat that is ready to be replaced. And as you can see, it's very sharp right here, and it's about to go through the seat. And the issue with this is that what will eventually happen is not only will the seat wear, but the ball will wear too. And if I put these two balls next to each other, you can see just how much wear you ended up with. Here's your newer ball, and here's a ball that's been cycling for quite some time and has worn in diameter. What will eventually happen is you will end up with a seat that looks like this. And that seat, what happens is the ball will begin to wear away the side cover. And as you can see here, if I take this seat and I put it in here and I put the ball is now seating inside the side cover. And once that starts to happen, you have to replace not only the balls and the seats, but you have to replace the liquid chamber as well. And the reason for that is, yes, it will sit in here, but the seating surface has no support. And so these seats will actually they will wear out prematurely because there's nothing supporting the underneath of the seat. So it's absolutely critical that we constantly swap out balls and seats, because those are actually the first thing that will wear out on these pumps, along with the diaphragms. So that is the subject of the balls and the seats. So you replace the diaphragms, you've replaced the balls, the seats. The next thing that wears out is the outer plate. And what this is the plate that is comes in contact with the material. And as the diaphragm flexes and cycles, the material gets between the edge of the plate and the diaphragm, and you end up with wear that, as you can see, creates a very sharp edge and will eventually cut the diaphragm. So we want to swap these out. What we've done is we now offer a cast iron version of this, and it has superior wear to this softer aluminum. So as you repair your pumps, we would recommend swapping out your aluminum outer plates and purchasing a replacement set of cast iron plates, and they're going to give you 3 or 4 times the wear of the aluminum. A good investment. When you take apart your pump, if you have a ruptured diaphragm, you want to take your cycle valve off, and you want to make sure that no material has gotten inside the cycle valve. In this case, that's exactly what's happened here. And as you may, I think you can see it, once the material gets in here, it destroys the piston and the surface of the housing, and you end up with a very expensive paperweight. And so we really, really, really stress that changing the diaphragms is absolutely critical if we want to conserve this part. And the only way these things really go bad is if you're pumping them, you're operating with dirty air, or you get a ruptured diaphragm and it scores the inside of the valve. So if you have had a ruptured diaphragm and you find that material has made its way inside the cycle valve, you do have to replace this because the pump simply will not operate properly. The same goes for the center section. As you can see here, they had a ruptured diaphragm. Material got inside the center section, and what it ends up doing is it scores the inside of the center section, and they just, no matter how much you clean them, they never seem to work the same ever again. You can see this is just absolutely loaded with coating from the ruptured diaphragm. Lastly, we have the discharge manifold, and these don't necessarily have to be swapped out all the time, but I'm going to show you a new one. This is our cast iron version, and as your aluminum discharges wear out, you're going to want to replace them with the cast iron version, because just like the outer plates, these are going to give you a much better life, and you'll have to replace them much less frequently. There is a considerable amount of meat on these pins here, and as the pump cycles and it wears, you'll find that the pins will get thinner and thinner and thinner. And what I'll do is I'll show you an old one. This is one that has been in operation, and you can see that the pins, they're sharp and they're about to begin to really wear through. The problem with this is it creates a larger space for the ball to travel when it cycles, so it puts more wear on the ball and the seat because the distance is increased, and so there's a greater force on the ball and the seat. So not a good situation. This is still operable, but you're now at the point where you really need to begin to think about replacing this. This is one that's worn out. It's ready to be replaced. As you can see, sorry about that. As you can see, it's really wearing through the pins and will eventually start just seating. It'll start slamming against the housing here. Less than ideal. So really, those are the big wear parts on these pumps. you could get away with simply replacing the balls and seats in the top of the pump. That's where all the force is at. If you replace the balls and seats in the top of the pump, you can start out doing it once every 4 weeks. If you find that you're not making it to quite this level in 4 weeks, then next time you switch them out at 5 weeks and continue to lengthen that window until you find that sweet spot where they're really wearing out and you get the most life out of them. I would venture to say, now that we're going to these diaphragm, these neoprene diaphragms, you're going to see much more flexibility. You could do the same with the diaphragms that you do with the seats. Maybe you replace the diaphragms every time you do the seats. Start out at 4 weeks and extend that window 5, 6, 7 weeks. I think you could do that and not have to replace any of the gaskets. You don't even, I don't think, need to replace the O-rings inside the center section. Any of the other rubber parts, and I think you would be okay. The O-rings that go on these, diaphragm or on these seats, you can reuse those as well. They're not what I would consider a wear part. They're simply to seal the air between the liquid chamber and the discharge.